Good afternoon and hello everyone. On behalf of the British Council and Central Board of Secondary Education, a very warm welcome to everyone present here and the educators who've joined us virtually from all across the country. We welcome you all to the competency-based education project, Open Day 2. I am Peenal Rana, Senior Manager Education, and I'll be your host for this afternoon. Before we begin, we would like to highlight a few key points related to the program. We will run the session in a blended format with few educators joining us face-to-face here in the theater of the British Council Delhi office and many school leaders and teachers joining us virtually from across the CBSE schools in India through the YouTube live platform. All the videos, presentations, and website links that you'll see in the event today will be shared with all attendees at the end of the 3-day event. We will also be sharing the catalog of the EdTech companies who will be making their presentations today. At the end of every session, you will have an opportunity to ask questions. We request all the teachers and school leaders who are joining us virtually to post their questions in the chat box. We will try to address a few questions in each session. We will not have any breaks in the event today. However, those of you who are present here in the theater can step out for water or comfort breaks. Moving on further, so British Council in partnership with the CBSE initiated the competency-based education project in March 2020. Together, we are working to bring about a systematic change in the school education system and move away from rote learning to competency-based teaching and learning. Through hands-on training, we have supported development of test item writers and upskilled teachers to deliver high-quality lessons, which are competency and skill-focused. In addition to this, and for the benefit of CBSE schools, exemplar material has been developed to support school and teachers to move away again from the rote learning and to learning and competency-based education. All these project resources like learning framework, lesson plans, question banks, etc. are available on the CBSE microsite. Now let us watch a video that will give you an overview of the competency-based education project.
Rote learning has been a common practice in schools across India, a system defined by memorization, a system that focuses more on content-based learning. With the visionary National Education Policy 2020, the focus has now shifted from content to competency. The new policy calls for a breakdown in artificial barriers between subjects and development of higher-order thinking skills. It highlights the need for an assessment system that encourages real learning. Competency-based learning enables high-quality education journey and takes them beyond the confines of their textbook, linking their learning to life. To support competency-based education, British Council entered into a partnership with the Central Board of Secondary Education in March 2020 and launched the Competency-Based Education Project. As a part of this project, British Council and its knowledge partner Alpha Plus, in partnership with CBSE India, present the Competency-Based Assessment Framework. Designed in collaboration with UK experts, the assessment framework provides professional development to education system leaders, teachers, and examination designers. Under the direction and guidance of CBSE, the project uses assessment as a driver and motivator of change in teaching quality in the classroom. Overall, the Competency-Based Education Project provides mentorship support for the teachers, embeds new learning into classroom teaching practice, guides reading, English, maths, and science teachers of classes 6 to 10 to drive practical learning, strengthens the capacity of schools to create high-quality competency-based question papers. This project will directly support 15 education leaders, 2,000 school principals, 15 senior government leaders, 180 test item writers, 360 master trainers, which will further impact 25,000 CBSE schools that include 2,000 JNVs and KVs, 132,000 teachers, and 20 million learners by 2024. 4 high-profile UK organizations will contribute their expertise to the project. The Competency-Based Education Project aims to bring about systemic change in teaching, learning, and assessment practices by 2024. The project will not only make a lasting impact on the education ecosystem, but will also help students realize their potential so that they can fully contribute to making the country and the world safe, sustainable, prosperous, and peaceful.
So I would now request Rashi Chen, Director, North India, British Council, to start the event with a welcome note. Rashi, can we have you here on the stage?
Thank you, Pinal. And this gives us a liberty of removing our mask, finally. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rashi, and I'm the Director for North for the British Council in India. First of all, I'd like to extend a very, very warm welcome to all our colleagues from CBSE, school heads, teachers, and educators to this platform, where we are celebrating the success and achievements of the Competency-Based Education Project. And I'd also like to offer my congratulations to each one of you who have been part of this long and arduous journey, but a beautiful one with us. As you've seen from the film, the British Council, in partnership with CBSE, launched the Competency-Based Assessment Project in March 2020. Now, according to me, this is a very unique reform project that's working to strengthen the school system and support improved learner outcomes to better prepare students with these skills they need for the success as we know now in the 21st century. The basic aim of the project is to shift assessment from focus on recall and note. I'm sure all of us have gone through that as 25 years back when we all did our school, that it was completely rote and mug learning, to what's actually needed now in the 21st century to focus on competency-based assessment and to move from content to competency. And in this, of course, it is very much aligned to India's new National Education Policy 2020. At the British Council, we are delighted to have been able to bring the best of the UK's experience and knowledge to support the Government of India and CBSE to achieve the ambitious goals of the NEP in schools across the country. Our team have been working very, very closely with the CBSE officials and our UK partners, namely Cambridge, ECTIS, which is, some of you know it as NARIC erstwhile, and Alpha Plus, plus the University of Bath, to create samples of good practice, trained assessment designers, test item writers, master trainers, mentors, and provide input to senior leadership to lead this change in an inclusive, sustainable, and I believe the most important, participatory manner. And we've now reached the most important stage of the project, in which we need to scale this initiative to 25,000 CBSE schools. And it is an important step in this process is communicating the project to schools, leaders, and principals, which is why we've organized our 3 open days, which was one yesterday, you're witnessing one today, and we'll conclude the session tomorrow as well. The British Council is deeply committed to driving a systemic change within the school ecosystem in India, and we are proud to be partner and enabler for so many of you. We hope that through working in partnership, we'll empower schools to build their ability to create the skills and environment to provide the high quality, very important again, competency-based education called for in the NEP 2020. Let me take this opportunity as well, on behalf of the British Council, to thank all of you for giving us your time today. I'd also like to say particular thanks to our friends and colleagues at the CBSE and our partners in UK, Cambridge, ECTIS, and Alpha Plus, and University of Bath. And I can't conclude without giving a special thanks to 2 people at the Ministry of Education, without whom this project wouldn't have been a reality, namely Ms. Neeta Prasad and Ms. Anita Karwal. Thank you, ma'am, both. It's a real pleasure to be here today. I'm very much looking forward to hearing all of you from how the experience of this project has changed the way we teach, we learn, and we assess in the schools of the country. Thank you so much. With that, I'll hand over back to Peenal. Thank you.
Thank you, Rashi. I would now request Biswajit Saha, Director, Training and Skill Education, CBSE, to come on stage and address the audience. Sir, can we have you on stage?
Thank you, Pranil. Good afternoon to all the members who are present in this theater, and of course, many of our colleagues who have joined us virtually from different parts of the country. And of course, all the team members from British Council and my colleague from CBSE. It's an extreme honor to witness this kind of activities and rather showcasing the power of collaborations. So at this point of time, I think the way we are discussing, this is one of its kinds projects which initiated by British Council and CBSE. And in the journey, I think we rope in with multiple organizations, as Rashi has already mentioned, from UK. So with their power, how we can synergize so that new education policies implementation, especially in terms of promoting competency-based education, and also to ignite the culture of innovation in school, which is, I think, primarily we are aiming out of these projects. So at this point of time, as multiple master trainers are being trained and good numbers of principals are exposed with this kind of credential, now in the second phase, we are actually aiming to drive the mission in a cascading mode so that last mile connectivities are being established so that we can ultimately remove the diversity. Diversity will retain, but customization and contextualizations to each and every classroom need to be tested. And there, I think our teacher community, and especially I think most of the teachers who have joined from the West Zone today, so there should be ethical competitions between Northeast, which joined yesterday, West today, and tomorrow South. And ultimately, together, we need to uh, just visualize this particular mission in a very big way. Because today's classroom, of course, which are happening in a virtual mode, teachers are facing a lot of challenges to teach on screen. And even this is equally relevant for the parents, even for the student. So maybe by 2022, a new beginnings will be there where kind of hybrid model will exist. But in terms of physical training, I think competency and innovations in the classrooms is quite crucial. And just to share with you 2, 3 other initiatives, because we are planning that School Innovation Council could be primarily active in this front. And a teacher who are already trained, I think first and foremost duty, especially for the mentor teachers and mentor principal, first of all, you just without waiting for any instruction from CBSE or British Council, you try to experiment your learning first in your school premises, and you take a session with your own peers and other colleagues. And in the second phase, whatever MOOCs we are going to generate, those things will be very much there in our CBSE site, and also some organized platform. And ultimately, these resources will be retaining, but both front, whether it is item making or pedagogical interventions, a separate journey in terms of cohesion we need to establish. And there, without your support and commitment, and also personal involvement is required. Otherwise, we can formulate many policy. We may formulate good numbers of manual with international publications tag. But if you are not internally accepting this change, I think it is not possible to reach last mile, which is the objective of Ministry of Education. So with this thought, let me pause here, and thanks to all the faculty and principal who have joined us physically and virtually, and special thanks to British Council and its partner organization, University of Cambridge, University of Bath, and UKNRE. So all the organizations, it's a special thanks. And of course, the new innovations in EdTech, what they have arranged today, we may think of what way the other organizations and startup are thinking. And same way, whether that culture we can start here as per our need and specific requirement. So with this thought, once again, thank you and namaskar.
Thank you, Sahasa, for the useful advice for all our educators.
Sorry.
I would now like to call on stage Rebecca Ronson, Senior Academic Manager, British Council, to give us an overview of the CBSE CBE project.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be able to present to you today the CBSE competency-based education project. This is a project that we're doing in partnership with CBSE, and it's great to be able to give you an overview of the project and also take you through the main findings of the initial scoping report and how you can see the project has based its activities around those recommendations. Okay, so let's start with what competency-based education is. So competency-based education is an approach to teaching, learning and assessment, which focuses on students' ability to demonstrate learning outcomes and to attain proficiency in particular competencies in each subject. And it does that by empowering students. Empowering students is the focus of competency-based education. And it does that by providing meaningful and positive learning experiences, by placing the learner at the center and involving them in their own learning journey, putting an emphasis on real-world application of skills and knowledge, bringing the world into the classroom, making learning authentic. There's a core theme of equity and differentiated support running throughout the approach. And when it comes to assessment, it's a real advocate for formative assessment to guide teaching and learning. And summative assessment is robust and valid. So the project has this vision of strengthening capacity in CBSE affiliated schools to deliver high quality competency-based lessons and competency-based assessment to improve the overall outcomes of learners, particularly in the subjects of English reading, maths and science in classes 6 to 10. So the three main objectives are building capacity in competency-based assessment, providing schools and educators with the tools and capacity they need to deliver competency-based teaching, and providing a data bank of resources which teachers can use and assessors can use, but also model the standards required. The project started early last year and is due to complete in March next year. And we've been working with a number of UK partners, experts in their field. You'll be hearing from a couple of these later in the day. So the impact of the project is going to be widely felt, and this is what is so exciting about this project. It's touching on so many different parts of the education ecosystem. So CBSE is leading the way with this assessment framework aligned to the National Education Policy, improving learning outcomes, promoting learning and development for students, and having a real focus on those higher order thinking skills that are so critical for their future success. Schools and educators will have the tools and the capacity to design high quality assessments and test items for use in end of class tests, and to be able to ensure that teaching in the classroom ensures success in their assessments. Learners will see a change from potentially what may be sometimes a content-heavy and knowledge-focused curriculum to one which really drives them to use their critical thinking capacity and to use deeper learning pedagogies to improve their outcomes. And we hope that there'll be a wider impact on the Indian education system as well, because this is a project that can act as a model and a template that can be replicated and adapted by other exam boards and governments across the country to fit their contexts. And we've heard about the National Education Policy 2020, and this project really does align with that, and it's crucial to its success. Because in the NEP, it does stress the importance of moving from an assessment framework that is summative and that primarily tests rote memorization skills to one that is that uses more regular and formative assessment, one which uses assessment which is competency-based and promotes and tests higher order skills. These higher order skills are those such as analysis, problem solving, critical thinking, and also creativity. And the NEP does emphasize that the primary purpose of assessment will be to support teachers and students in the learning process. So the project has done quite a lot of, has had many different activities under its umbrella. So we can talk about 4 key areas of work. So the first of these is the initial scoping review that was carried out last year, looking at the current system and comparing it with other systems of assessment internationally. I'll be talking more about that report in a moment and its findings. The second strand was developing an assessment framework which meets the demands of the NCERT curriculum and CBSE syllabuses. Third was building capacity through direct and cascade training, capacity in assessment with assessment designers and item writers, in pedagogy, competency-based pedagogy with master trainers, teacher mentors and teachers themselves, and building capacity of senior leaders to manage this change process. The fourth area of work falls under this under developing resources. So resources such as guidance documentation for teachers and assessors, like learning ladders, assessment specifications, providing a bank of question items that teachers can use for their end of class tests and for worksheets and homework, providing a bank of model lesson plans that exemplify the competency-based education approach, which teachers can use and reflect on, and also videos that allow teachers to continue their professional development in assessment and their understanding of how that can work and be valid and reliable. So let me talk about the scoping review. This was the first strand of work that was carried out last year, and it's what the rest of the project has used to build on and to develop its activities. So this was a review which looked at the standard 10 assessment from CBSE, and it also looked at how ready the system is for competency-based education. So this was undertaken by UK NARIC, now known as ECTIS, and what they did was they met with a variety of stakeholders in site visits, through online surveys and interviews. So they met with school leaders, teachers, students themselves, and they also looked at the current syllabuses, assessments, papers, and previous year's syllabuses and assessment papers. And then they took that information and compared that with assessment at standard 10 in countries like New Zealand, Malaysia, and Estonia to compare the assessment frameworks. And they looked at where they differed and where the similarities existed. And they found certain strengths, that there is a strong theoretical content base in the standard 10 assessment and the syllabus, and this does prepare students for higher level studies. There are already features of an outcomes-based syllabus in the current system, and teachers are already sometimes using CBE approaches, and some teachers are drawing on NCERT when planning learning outcomes. They found that there is positivity in terms of the overall curriculum, in terms of its broad and relevant coverage, and the teachers and school leaders are very positive about the use of continuous assessment. So there was certainly strengths in the current system, and what UK NARIC did was look at where the system could be strengthened and made more relevant for the needs of students and employers in the future. So these are the 5 key recommendations. The first was focusing on the syllabus and making it more valid for the needs of the future. So this included having a greater focus on higher order thinking skills, engaging employers and universities in the development of the syllabus and assessment, so that, for example, employability skills are built in, such as using calculators in science and mathematics exams to deal with real-world complex problems. In English, having a greater focus on communication, so students are able to use the language rather than just simply able to kind of respond to paper questions. There was a suggestion of increasing the validity of assessment. So validity of assessment can be improved by training item writers in different aspects and in integrating NCERT learning outcomes more concretely. Again, increasing reliability and transparency of assessment was suggested. And this can be done by using more detailed mark schemes, for example, and providing training for people to use the marking schemes effectively. Reducing the optionality in assessment papers, because more choice in an assessment paper decreases the reliability of assessment. So every student should be answering the same questions. And using external moderation, quality assurance procedures for internal assessment. In terms of fairness and the student experience, this can be improved by making assessments more accessible. They can be made more accessible by using scaffolding and structured questions, by simplifying the language of the questions and simplifying the layout of the questions on the assessment papers. And the final area was supporting teachers and developing pedagogy. So thinking about providing a bank of resources for teachers so that they can use these ready-made in their classroom, or they can use them as a model to develop their own resources. And guidance, documentation, and support in understanding a competency-based approach to teaching. So as you can see, the project activities that I talked about earlier have been designed to address many of these recommendations through building a more robust assessment framework, building capacity of assessment writers and teachers, and developing a bank of resources. So that's a quick tour through the project and the initial scoping review. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rebecca. So as part of this project, 180 participants attended the 6-day master trainer training, which aimed to create teachers' CPD modules on competency-based approach to pedagogy. An additional 3 days of CBE mentor training was organized by CBSE in collaboration with British Council and Cambridge Partnership for Education, an agency that has been commissioned for this task. We will now take this opportunity to honor the CBE mentor participants with their certificates. Due to COVID restriction, we could not invite all the participants for the face-to-face event. However, we congratulate each one of you and assure you that your certificate will reach you at the earliest. I would now like to call Bishwajit Saha sir and Rashi to come on stage and give certificates to these participants present here. On the mark, sir. So we will start with the first participant, Alpa Sharma, Mayur School, Expressway, Noida. Can we have a round of applause for each one of them? Anjali Chabra, CBSE subject expert. Anju Makhija, DPS Sector 45, Gurgaon. Ashish Mittal, Indrapuram Public School, Ghaziabad. Deepika Saraswat, DLF Public School, Sahibabad. Congratulations to each one of you. Moving on, we have Deepti Puri, DPS Sector 45, Gurgaon. Divya Agarwal, DPS Sector 45, Gurgaon. Isha Manchanda, The Modern School, Faridabad. Grishma Sharma, DPS Sector 45, Gurgaon. Congratulations to each one of you, and can we have a round of applause for them? Next, we have Ishita Mukherjee, CBSE subject expert. Jyoti Jain, JBM Global School, Noida. Kanika Neerav, Mamta Modern Senior Secondary School, Vikaspuri. Congratulations, ma'am. Next, we have Madhuri Dadich, Alcon International School, Delhi. Malabika Mukherjee, Manav Rachna International School, Gurgaon. Neeru Arora, Rukmani Devi Public School, Pitampura. Neeti Gulati, Ramjas School, RK Puram. Nidhi Vadhavan, Bal Bharti Public School, Pitampura. Congratulations to all the CBE mentors. Moving on, we have Nishu Mangla, Bal Bharti Public School, Pitampura. Neeta Arora, Sri Venkateshwar International School. Rachna Chugh, CBSE subject expert. Then we have Ruchi Sengar, again a CBSE subject expert. Sandhya Kakkar, Bal Bharti Public School, Dwarka. Sonal Singh, the Khaitan School, Noida. Shriparna Ghosh, DPS Sector 45, Gurgaon. And Subarna Zaman, KR Mangalam World School, GK. Congratulations, ma'am. Moving on, we have Sudipta Chatterjee, DPS RK Puram. Sudha Acharya, a CBSE expert. Surbhi Pandey, CBSE subject expert. Ujjaini Roy, the Khaitan School, Noida. Vandana Saini, DLF Public School, Sahibabad. Vineet Tomar, Sri Venkateshwar International School, Dwarka. And Rahul Sufat, Air Force Golden Jubilee Institute, Subrata Park. Congratulations, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Rashi. With this, we end the certification.
Thank you. Congratulations, everyone. Thank you. Congratulations to all the the members.
So next we have an EdTech presentation by Bernard Fawcett, international consultant from GL Education, who will join us virtually. GL
They
Education.
focused on
Sorry for that. So GL Education Group is the largest UK provider of formative and diagnostic assessments. They provide assessments for cognitive ability, attainment in maths, English, and science, and a range of assessments measuring barriers to learning and special needs. Can we now switch the screen for the presentation from the GL Group? Bernard requests you to keep up to the 10 minutes time for your presentation, followed by a 5 minutes for the Q&A session. We will notify you with a beep sound as you finish your 10-minute slot to move to the question and answers. Over to you, Bernard.
accessibility, using authentic sources, integrating visuals into their questions. Learning outcomes more transparency in assessment.
Right, there seems to be some audio playing at the moment from another video.
Reducing the number of questions.
Are you ready for me now?
For internal assessment.
Hello and thank you. It's great to see so many people attending this event today, both online and in person. I'm Bernard Fawcett, one of the international consultants for GL Education. I've worked as a teacher and a senior leader within a secondary school in the UK for a number of years, and also worked as a consultant for one of the exam boards before moving to GL about 4 years ago to work with schools across Asia. GL Education has been established for around 40 years. We're the largest provider of formative and diagnostic assessments in the UK, and now work with around
Bernard, we
20,000.
can't hear you. We would like you to restart your session in a minute.
Okay, has there been a problem?
Sorry, this is Stephen McGill from Cambridge. Everybody online can hear
That's a
you.
quick run through.
Audio is very fine, but I think the issue appears to be that the audio doesn't go through to the people in the conference room. So, we had this experience yesterday, so you'll have to bear with the room while they get their audio.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Yeah, I can hear a video playing in the background.
Yeah, Bernard, we can also hear a video, and I think it's the technical problems at their end. I'm not in Delhi, by the way. I'm just in the UK, but I'm just experience.
Today's assessment design and training was organized by CBSE in collaboration with British Council and Alpha Plus. Rowan, if you could accompany, sir. So, ma'am, we will start with you. Joint Secretary, Academic, CBSE. There seems to be some platform problem. Neeti ji, if you can just check that. Bernard, can you hear us? Can you start the session now?
Yeah, if you're ready for me to start.
Anjali Sabra, again from CBSE. Just a minute, Bernard. Sure. We move on to next. Asta Sharma, Mayur School, Noida. Bernard, if you can just check if your YouTube feed is also on.
Congratulations, Ms. Afra.
No, I've logged out of the YouTube feed and I'm just listening on Zoom.
Or any of the Zoom participant who's logged on to YouTube simultaneously. If the Zoom presenters can come out of the YouTube session.
Astha Sharma.
Bernard, can you just sign out of the session and log in once again for the session?
I will do, yeah.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Bernard,
Next we have Abha Dua, Lotus Ali International School, Noida.
Are you ready for me to start now?
Good to go. Please start. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I'll just share. Apparently the screen sharing has been disabled, so I can't share the presentation. Can you? Okay, hopefully you can all see the screen now. So thank you. Hopefully we've got over all the technical difficulties now. It's great to see so many people attending this event today, both online and in person. I'm Bernard Fawcett. I'm one of the international consultants at GL Education. I've worked as a teacher myself and a senior leader within a secondary school in the UK for a number of years, and also worked as a consultant for one of the exam boards before moving to GL about 4 years ago to work with schools across Asia. GL Education has been established for around 40 years. We're the largest provider of formative and diagnostic assessments in the UK, and now work with around 20,000 schools in over 100 countries around the world. This includes some 20 of the top performing schools in India and 55 CBSE schools in the UAE. We've worked with numerous distinguished research organisations around the world, including King's College, the University of Cambridge, and the Australian Council for Educational Research. We're continuing investing in developing high quality assessments, delivering over 10 million digital tests worldwide in the last 5 years alone. We also partner with numerous professional organisations, including FOBASIA, ESIS, BSME, and COBIS. Our mission is to work in partnership with schools and school groups to unlock the power of education by providing teachers with insights into students' ability, their attainment, and barriers to learning, and thereby enabling children worldwide to reach their full potential. The Cognitive Abilities Test version 4, or CAT4, is probably our most well-known assessment and provides schools with an indication of a student's academic potential. We also provide assessments of progress in English, maths, and science, and assessments of English reading comprehension and spelling. And to complete the picture, we provide assessments which can identify barriers to learning. For example, our pupil attitude to self and school survey, and diagnostic tools to identify specific learning support needs. Formative assessment, or assessment for learning, has been proven to improve academic outcomes. The Cognitive Abilities Test CAT4 is an online digital assessment of students' reasoning skills in 4 key areas: verbal reasoning, or thinking with words; non-verbal, or thinking with shape and pattern; quantitative thinking, which is thinking with numbers; and spatial reasoning, which is thinking with shape and space. This means it's not dependent on the curriculum being taught, so it's curriculum neutral. The results from CAT4 can be used to identify academic potential and then help schools to track student progress to ensure they reach their full potential. As the test is delivered online, reports are available immediately. We also provide indicators of possible outcomes in external exams such as GCSE, A-level, IB, and CBSE. CAT4 is mandatory for certain year groups in the UAE, and therefore CAT4 has already been standardised for UAE CBSE schools, with indicators for future competence in Hindi, English, maths, science, and social science. CAT4 reports provide very detailed analysis of student strengths and areas for development to help schools, teachers, and parents understand where students' competencies are strongest. So how can CAT4 help? I'd like to introduce you to two students, Mira and Aisha. They're both 12 years old. Their English reading ages are 10, which means their English is a little bit behind their actual age, but their teachers think they could both do more and both have high aspirations for their futures. The school decides to introduce the CAT4 test. So let's see what the results tell us about these two students who on the surface appear to teachers to be very similar. First of all, Aisha's results show us that she has great potential. The average CAT4 score is 100, and Aisha scores 136 for quantitative reasoning, 139 for non-verbal reasoning, and 140 for spatial reasoning. Her verbal score of 105 is still above average, but the school realised that if Aisha is to reach her goal of becoming a doctor, they will need to help her with her English so that she has the higher level language skills she'll need to succeed. Mira, on the other hand, has very typical scores of 95 for verbal, 98 for quantitative, 100 for non-verbal, and her spatial reasoning skills are very strong. The school realised that Mira has some potential to do very well in subjects like science, technology, engineering, and maths. Mira wanted to be a lawyer. The school encouraged Mira to take part in an after-school science club, which she thoroughly enjoys. And sometime later, when the school asked her about her career aspirations, she's decided that she wants to pursue a career as a research scientist. The school decides to use the new group reading test to track students' English reading comprehension skills. It's an adaptive test which changes to meet the needs of each student. It can be used up to 3 times a year with students aged from 7 to 16 and even includes a phonics assessment for younger students. Aisha has been receiving some high-level English support and can see that she's making good progress. 2 years later, when Aisha is 14, her English reading age is now similar to that of a 16 to 17-year-old, which has prepared her to do well in her exams. The school wanted to focus on student well-being, so they also decided to introduce the Pupil Attitude to Self and School Survey, or PASS, to see how students felt about school and their own potential. They know that happy students are successful students, and if they can identify those students who are struggling, they can help and support them to reach their full potential. The survey was designed by a team of educational psychologists. It's made up of 50 statements, which are combined to give scores for 9 different attitudinal factors. We also have translations available in a number of languages, including Hindi, Bengali, and Urdu. What sets PASS apart from a simple survey is the results are standardized against hundreds of thousands of responses from similar age students and presented as a percentile score. A simple traffic light system makes it easy for the school to spot areas for concern. PASS also includes a range of resources to support teachers and students. Evidence from some of the most successful international schools shows that having good data about students can help to personalise the learning experience and therefore help students to reach their full potential. We've seen from CAT 4 results how Aisha has the potential to do very well. The one thing holding her back was her English. As a consequence, her attainment test results were lower than expected. Here, we've used our progress tests to illustrate this, but CAT 4 and PASS can be used alongside any type of attainment test that you may be using, including those resources provided by the CBSE Competency Education Project. The PASS survey shows us that this made her feel that she didn't have the ability to do well, and potentially this could have resulted in poor performance in her exams. However, because the school had this rich data about Aisha, they were able to support her in the way she needed, and she went on to reach her full potential in her final exams. Having all this data also means the school can evidence the impact of their teaching and learning to all their stakeholders. To support schools, we've recently launched a 3-year flexible package of assessment called Student First, which offers discounted pricing based on your choice of multiple assessments. We now have some time to take a few questions, and please do look at our website and get in touch if you'd like to find out more or trial any of these assessments in your school.
Questions from the live audience present here or in the chat box, Sujata?
Question is, how does the product, what GL Education has shared here, how does it align with CBE or competency-based education? And how can it help teachers who use CBE?
Bernard,
Yeah,
would you
thank you.
answer that?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question. Yeah, so it's a really good question. And as I mentioned at the start, because CAT 4 is not content or curriculum based, it doesn't align to any particular curriculum at all. That's really useful to teachers who are part of the competency-based education project is that it provides them with an understanding of the skills that students have and their reasoning skills and how they process information and where their strengths lie. For example, if a student has strong spatial reasoning skills, it may help the teacher if they present information in the form of a flow chart or a mind map, which helps the student to see things visually. So it's about understanding the students and their skills and adapting the teaching and learning to meet those needs of the individual students, rather than it being mapped to any particular type of curriculum content.
Yes, sir. Can we have the mic for Saha, sir?
Let me thank you for effective presentations. And in fact, partially I am aware of this CAT 4 test, but one specific things I want to know, that is how to measure the learning ability of an individual learner when they are in a formative age, and whether is there any mechanisms to really come up with from your CAT 4 test. Learning ability. So certainly this linguistic capability or verbal or spatial or other reasoning ability are there. But what about the normal learning curve, if we like to define, because that student to student, usually there are a lot of variations, and country to country also that cross-cultural issues are there, contextualization. So how a standardized test can really make that effort to fetch the learning ability. So accordingly, if we can really tell the teachers, okay, this is the learning ability of X student, so accordingly they can contextualize the classroom activities or whatever. So the post-planning teachers are very smart to handle these issues. So
yeah,
if you can...
that's a really good question. And I think what CAT 4 does is it gives you an indication of how well students process information in different forms. So it's looking at if they're presented with information in the form of diagrams and maps and things, that they would need strong spatial skills to be able to interpret that data. So it tells you how well they can process information in different formats, whether that's verbally, as in terms of drawings, shapes, patterns, and things like that. So traditionally, I think education has been very verbal, and we talk a lot as teachers. We talk a lot. We give students things to read a lot, but a lot of students have other skills in terms of being able to absorb and process information. And Cat4 gives you an indication of how well they can actually process information in different formats, and give teachers a little bit of help in terms of how can I adapt the way I'm presenting information for students to learn so that they can actually understand that and process that. And as I've mentioned, particularly spatial skills are very important for science and maths subjects. And if you can see that students have those skills, that will certainly help. And there's a strong correlation between students having those skills and being able to do well in academic subjects.
Thank you, Bernard. Sujata, do we have any more questions? I think we should move on to the next session and we can take those questions separately.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So next we have Dave Meller, Director of Assessment and Project Lead at Alpha Plus Consultancy Limited, who will join us virtually and share the online outline of the assessment framework created as part of the project. Alpha Plus is an education assessment consultancy based in Manchester, UK, worked on large number of national and international projects for schools, vocational and professional assessment. Can we now switch the screen for the presentation from Alpha Plus? Over to you, Dave.
Hi, Pinal. Thank you very much. I'm really pleased to be able to join you today. It's a rather wet day in Manchester, so I hope the weather is better for you in India. I'm just going to share my screen, so bear with me a minute. Should come up. You should be able to see the presentation. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so Alpha Plus have been working with EEF to support the British Council and CBSE on a number of projects to deliver assessments for competency-based education. The projects themselves involved designing an assessment framework to support this, to train assessment developers and item writers, and for the item writers to produce a bank of items or questions for use by teachers. So it's been a pretty significant piece of work that we've worked on. And I want to talk through the structure and how the assessment framework works. So the starting point for all of this has been the idea that we want to move away from sort of more rote learnt, knowledge-based curriculum and assessment to something that assesses student competencies, so their ability to use knowledge and information and apply it to different situations, to analyze, to evaluate, and to demonstrate and to develop higher order skills. So the starting point for any development of any assessment framework is the domain. And we started with the NCERT curriculum because that sets out the learning outcomes that students are expected to be able to demonstrate. And it also identifies the pedagogical processes that teachers can use to help support those learning outcomes. And these are the competencies that students need to develop to be successful in the modern world. So we looked at that NCERT curriculum, and what we identified was that whilst it's got the skills in there, it doesn't have a huge amount of detail in terms of the content that needs to be taught and assessed, because that's left to the boards. So we then looked at the CBSE syllabi, and here's an extract from one, it's science one, and it sets out at a high level all of the content that needs to be covered in the different classes. What we then needed to do was to marry up that content there with the skills that are set out in the NCERT curriculum. And we did this through creating a learning ladder. And essentially, this is the assessment domain. This tells you what it is that needs to be assessed, what the students are expected to be able to know and do. If you look at the learning ladders, you can see on the left-hand side, and this is an example for Class 9 Science, you have the learning outcomes that are stipulated and the pedagogical information from the NCERT curriculum. And on the right-hand side, in column 3, you have a description of the content that is married up to those learning outcomes. So in this case, the learner is expected to differentiate between different types of materials. So linking that to the curriculum, linking that to the syllabus content, it's about defining matters as solids, liquids and gases and so forth. And then in the 4th column, there's some additional information about the assessment objectives, which I'll come on to later, and ideas for types of questions that might be used. So we did this for English reading and maths and science, and we created a learning ladder that covers classes 6 to 10. That then tells you what it is that you need to assess the students on. But what it doesn't tell you is what should the assessment look like, and how should the assessment work. So the next step is to create a set of design principles. And the design principles are the rules or limitations on what should be assessed and how it should be assessed. So they will set out quite typically, as in the CBSE end of class assessments, what format it will be. So the decision was that these needed to be written format only. So there's no assessment of, in the end of class tests, direct assessment of practical skills in science or speaking and listening skills in English, for instance, because that makes the assessments more manageable for teachers. The English is only going to be reading. We're not assessing writing. That was part of the commission from the British Council. The assessments have to be marked by the teachers, and they need to be aligned to the NCERT curriculum and the CBSE syllabi. They've got to focus on higher order skills, and they've got to support good pedagogy, because we know that assessment drives teaching practice. And also the length of the assessments, they can't be too long. They've got to be manageable for the schools and also for the students. So particularly for the younger students, you don't want very long assessments. And then there's things like calculators being used in science and some of the maths questions. A lot of this was based on the work that NCFE did to review the CBSE standard 10 examinations, and we took their findings and designed some of the rules around those findings to try and deal with the report from NARIC, and to present a new sort of assessment. So once you've got the principles agreed, what you then need to do is create the assessment specifications. And the assessment specifications are essentially setting out what the structure of the assessment is. And that assessment specification will tell you things like the number of assessments there are going to be in any given subject. So for maths, there's 2 assessments, one with a calculator and one without. the number of questions that they will contain, and the number of marks that there will be, and the number of questions, and also the type of questions. So are they short answer, multiple choice, extended response, those sorts of things. And it will also tell you the length of the assessment, and probably most importantly, they will tell you the assessment objectives. And the assessment objectives are used by the item writers along with the assessment specification and the learning ladder to write questions or items for the assessment. And assessment objectives are basically a statement of the skills at a high level that a student is expected to be able to demonstrate. The learning objectives or learning outcomes are at a too detailed level to use in an assessment. So you need to lift them up a little bit. And here's an example of one, and it shows for the English reading the 4 assessment objectives that are used. The first 2 are about demonstrating understanding of explicit and implicit meanings in texts. And the key to this is that we're no longer assessing just recall of knowledge. It's about assessing whether or not the student can apply their knowledge to given texts. So in this case, they won't have seen these texts before in many cases. For AO3, it's a higher order skill because it's talking about how the writer's use of language and structure creates meaning in a passage or a piece of text. And then AO4 is a personal response to the text supported by textual references. And you can see how the weightings of these change throughout the classes. So the focus is on AO1 and 2 in the lower classes at 6 to 8, and then increasingly the focus is on 3 and 4 in classes 9 and 10. And that's partly because you're focusing on higher order skills, but also because we're introducing a literature paper which assesses the set texts for classes 9 and 10 for CBSE. So these assessment objectives, and there are specifically written assessment objectives for maths and science, are there to guide the item writers for the skills that they want to assess when they're producing items. They're based loosely on Bloom's taxonomy, but they're subject specific. And that's really important because that really hones what it is you're assessing. So as part of the project, we trained 175 item writers on how to write good questions and mark schemes. And they produced a bank of questions which we quality assured and which are now available on the CBSE microsite. And within that, we documented and logged all of the questions on Excel spreadsheets. And here's a screenshot from English. And you can see all the questions down the side, the identification of them. And I'll show you a presentation of the question in a minute. It shows you which assessment objective it's covering. And it also tells you, in this case for English, the type of text that is being covered. So it's an informative magazine article for the one that you can see on the screen at the moment. And then there's a little brief description of the source. So these spreadsheets, if you're a teacher, what it allows you to do is search the item bank, and you might say, I want a set of questions that are going to assess a student on their ability to engage with a novel or short story extract, or an informative magazine article. And I can look on the spreadsheet and find what I want. For science and maths, it lists the content areas of the learning ladder. And it allows you to search. I want a question on acids or bases. I want a question on algebra to use in a workbook or to use in class or to create a test. So all of the spreadsheets allow you to search the items. And there's one for each class, for each subject, an individual sheet. So as a teacher, it's a usable resource for you to take and find the questions. And when you look at the questions. They're laid out as a Word document, and here's an example of a maths question. And it tells you at the top what the subject is, what the class is, what the file name or reference is. So you can look it up on the spreadsheet, and then you can find it in the documents. And then it tells you there's some metadata at the start. So it tells you the number of marks for each of the subparts of the question, what assessment objective the marks are for, and a description of the content that is being assessed in maths. And it also, in mathematics, it tells you whether a calculator is needed or no calculator allowed, or whether it could be used in either. There's also the next part of it is a picture of the source. In this case, it's a picture of a Rubik cube. Yeah? And the next part is the questions themselves, and it's a question, often with a bit of a stem, and a number of marks, and then finally the mark scheme. What you can then do with these as a teacher is you copy and paste the questions and the sources into a separate Word document, and you can other materials used. So use the materials for your own purposes, and obviously you can adapt them if you would like, but also you can create the mark schemes, so you can share that between teachers if everyone's using the same materials, and you can add questions together and build your own banks of questions. So it's a pretty powerful tool, and what it allows you to do is focus your time and effort on the teaching rather than writing the assessments. So on this slide, there's it's a bit of a diagram that gives an overview of the assessment framework. You can see the starting points in green, the NCERT curriculum and the CBSE syllabus, and these were used to create the learning ladder for each of the subjects. Then you can see all the items in blue, which are the assessment framework. So it's the learning ladder, which sets out the content that needs to be covered and assessed. The design principles, which are the rules for writing assessments at a high level. The assessment specification, which sets out the details of what an end of class test should look like. And then the assessment objectives, which sit within that assessment specification. We then use these to work with the group of item writers, and we commission them to write the items. And there are a bank of roughly 1,500 items across the different subjects and the different levels in the bank, which are documented in the item bank spreadsheets that teachers, who appear in yellow here, can use to create end of class assessments, topic tests, worksheets, etc. Or the teachers can use some of the items, because inevitably there's going to be gaps, because 1,500 items won't cover the whole of the content across all the subjects at all levels. But they can add to it with their own items, or they can use the learning ladder and assessment specification and assessment objectives to create their own items in line with the requirements of the assessment specification. And this allows teachers to create their own tests. Alongside all of this, there are a series of videos which have been produced. They're about 15 minutes long each, and they detail how to write good items, what the process should be, what things you need to consider, how to write different sorts of items, so multiple choice questions or short answer questions, how to produce mark schemes. They're all in these videos, so that will help and support teachers as well, writing items that are of a good quality. So in a nutshell, this is the framework that has been developed that is now on the microsite, and it will allow teachers to create their own assessment materials. This is in line with the changes that are coming in on the standard 10 and 12 exams, where we're seeing more higher order thinking skills, more competency-based assessment being introduced. And this should support teachers to help prepare their students for that change. The last thing I want to say is I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity that we've had to work with the British Council and with CBSE. It's been a really interesting project, and I'm really impressed at the dedication and the hard work of all the teachers that we've engaged with on this project. And I'd like to provide a thank you to them for their attendance at all the training sessions and all of their efforts in producing the items that are now within the bank. So thank you very much for listening. If there's any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you, Dave. So do we have any questions from the live audience present here or in the chat box? Go ahead, Sujata.
Okay, so there's a question for Dave, and they're asking, will the assessment framework include competencies on life skills, and also how it would cater to individual needs when a class size is usually of 50 students?
So in terms of life skills, what we've tried to do in the assessments is set them in a context that is more real world and realistic, but the focus is on the assessment of the subject specific knowledge rather than the softer skills. And that is something that doesn't really lend itself to the a written form of assessment, those soft skills. So those are better assessed by the teacher in the classroom. In terms of the second point, the how to deal with the large class size and varying student abilities. I think one of the challenges in writing any assessment is making sure that you write it to cope with the full range of abilities of your students. So what we have tried to do is include assessment items that some are harder and some are easier. And you can perhaps have different tests for different students to use, or different worksheets for different students to use, where you can stretch and challenge the most able by using some of the harder questions, and perhaps allow the less able students to be able to access some easier questions. But you would need to look through the bank of items for that. But there's no specific we've not tried to categorize the demand of the items specifically, because trying to do that in the varied Indian context would have been too challenging with the scale of the project. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Dave. That answers the question. So let us now watch a film that showcases the linkage between the various resources developed as part of this project.
Assessment. Just the word can send chills down the spine. It does not just bother the students, but the teachers and parents too. Assessments for decades have been rote-based, with very little focus on understanding or application of concepts. These may have served the needs of the past, but they are inadequate for the skills needed in today's world. The world has evolved significantly. So should the learning and assessment in our schools. The National Education Policy NEP 2020 prioritizes the shift from content to competency and provides a framework for this change. In partnership with CBSE, the British Council presents the Competency-Based Assessment Framework. Now, using this framework, teachers will be able to provide greater flexibility in the learning process, focus on students' knowledge, skills, and understanding, test higher order skills. Not only does it support students, but it also extends professional development for teachers as well as assessment designers. To drive this revolutionary shift, the British Council has curated a comprehensive resource bank that acts as a step-by-step guide to implementing the new assessment framework. All you have to do is log into cbseacademic.nic.in. Here, you'll find a host of resources. You can access the learning ladders, which map the syllabus content for classes 6 to 10 for English, Maths and Science. Assessment specifications for each subject with objectives and test structure. Model questions on how to assess competencies. Question banks to help you locate the appropriate questions. A bank of lesson plans to drive competency-based education in classrooms. And tutorial videos to help you produce effective assessments. As you plan your class tests, you can use the learning ladder to identify the content, skills or topics you wish to cover from the NCERT curriculum or CBSE syllabus. Then, take a look at the assessment specification, which describes how to create an assessment and evaluate skills. You can create tests by selecting relevant questions from the question bank, or use the question bank for end-of-topic tests and in-class worksheets. Focus on competencies means your teaching will become more interactive and individualized, with more time for higher-order thinking skills. That is why the sample lesson plans are available online to prepare you exactly for this and much more. Simply download these resources and use them creatively in your class. Have you noticed? The transformation towards competency-based teaching, learning, and assessment practices has begun. Go to cbseacademic.nic.in today. Start downloading and using these resources to make it a meaningful and positive learning experience for all.
So all these resources are available on the CBSE microsite, the link for which will be shared at the end of the 3-day event. We will now have a session on Introduction to UK Digital Expertise by Vipul Bhargava, Department for International Trade. Can we now switch the screen for the presentation from DIT?
Thank you very much. I just wanted to make sure that you can see my slides.
We can.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to make sure. So thank you for that, and a very good afternoon to everybody there. So after the morning sessions, I guess you're now about to hear from a range of British organizations who can help you, solving some of these challenges in education through the use of technology. So my name is Vipul, and I work as an advisor with the Department for International Trade. The Department for International Trade is a UK government organization that helps British organizations to work across different geographies. I lead on education technology, and I've been in this sector for a very long time. What I wanted to cover today was just sort of lay the context out of why you should be listening to British organizations and why you should, perhaps give them your very valuable time. So if I just start off very quickly, I just wanted to share with you that, of course, the edtech market is getting huge, and especially post-COVID. And you see some big countries like India, China, Brazil, America, who are leaders in producing a lot of edtech companies, right? I'm sure you're getting bombarded with stuff from Byju's and Vedantus of the world. But UK, with a population of 60 million compared to 1.2 billion and 1.4 billion of China, 300 million of US, 200 million of Brazil, UK is a very small country. The fact that UK stacks up there with these big countries just shows you the strength of UK edtech companies. And that's only gone strength to strength during COVID. The other point I'd quite like to make, and I'll make again towards the end of my presentation, is that the UK domestic market is actually quite small for some of these edtech companies. So they've done well domestically, but very quickly, UK companies start to look at international growth. So when they develop these products for users like you, the products have been designed for an international flavor. So you'll find British companies are very flexible, and they're very eager to work with international organizations, because that's really how they've thought about it when the companies have been set up in the first place, right? So, and why is that happening, right? There's really 4 key factors I wanted to highlight. Why is UK producing so many great edtech companies for its size, right? The first is, of course, the fantastic universities that are in the UK. For years now, people have been looking up to British education. And even today, I'm sure you've heard of Oxford and Cambridge, which of course consistently rank, but of course also Edinburgh University, etc. And we have many such universities. In fact, 30 of the UK institutions are in the top 200 global universities. So a lot of great universities, students, not just from UK, but internationally, coming to these universities and producing great talent who then go on to either work for or set up great edtech companies. UK edtech companies attract the best global talent. If you see, and this is a surprising statistic, but London has the highest number of professional developers by any major tech capital, right? So, we certainly punch above his weight, even more than San Francisco and New York, right? So a lot of great tech talent in the UK. But of course, none of this would be possible if you didn't have an ecosystem which supports edtech companies. So Department of Education, again, where I do some work now, is promoting a lot of edtech. So the Ministry of Education in the UK is promoting a lot of edtech, right? So there's a whole ecosystem around it. We've got accelerators like Emerge, etc. And we've got BISA, which is a British Education Suppliers Association, which is the industry body for edtech companies. They make sure that edtech companies that are in UK are of high quality. And as a result, half of Europe's top 20 fastest growing edtech companies come from the UK, right? So very proudly British. And finally, of course, we have BET, which I'm sure some of you may have attended in the past, which is a large conference held every January, except last year, of course, which showcases the best of edtech around the world. It's one of the world's largest education technology conferences. If you haven't attended it, I highly recommend it. But again, something organized in London. So there's a lot of focus on edtech from the government, from the ecosystem, and from the private players. And some of the things I wanted to sort of leave you with is a lot of myth around British products, right? So a lot of companies, as I mentioned, they're thinking about international growth from the word go, right? So whether it's language development, if you want local language, if you want them to work in partnership with some other organization you're working with, British companies tend to be very flexible when it comes to selling to international markets. A big misconception is that UK edtech products are expensive. They are not expensive, especially as the cost of technology has reduced. We find the UK tech products are actually very, at least can compare with probably products from India and from other parts of the world. And very important for you teachers out there is that you see a lot of technology being sold to you and people trying to sell you technology. But let's not get trapped into buying technology for technology's sake, right? So the focus, certainly the last 4 or 5 years in the UK, has been focus on efficacy, making sure the technology works, making sure students are learning better, making sure teachers are teaching easier. So a lot of the products in the UK actually focus on efficacy. They actually work. One of the themes in UK over the last 4 or 5 years has been around reducing teacher workload. We all know how busy teachers are. And so how can technology solve some of those issues that teachers are faced with? So that's really what a lot of the UK edtech companies are focusing on. So I just wanted to sort of lay the context here. That is my email address in case you have any questions about, say, I want this area, who do I talk to? Please feel free to reach out to me. Otherwise, I don't want to take any more of your precious time, and I'll pass it on to the edtech companies who are going to be coming next. Thank you for listening to me today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Vipul, for the useful insight. So next we have another EdTech presentation by Cambridge Partnership for Education. introducing their online professional development program for foundational and preparatory level, which is aligned to the National Education Policy 2020. The primary audience for this program is teachers from CBSE schools and schools with English as a medium of instruction. The team will deliver the session in a hybrid format, with colleagues presenting both face-to-face and virtually. Preeti Hingorani, Vice President Education Reform, and Nivedita Bose, Regional Senior Education Manager, will be presenting face-to-face, and Stephen McGill, Senior Education Advisor, and Mark Nassim, Head of Professional Development, will join them for the session virtually. Can we have you on the stage, Nivedita? I request you to keep up to the 10 minutes time for your presentation, followed by 5 minutes of the Q&A session. We will notify you with a beep sound when you finish our 10-minute slot. Over to you.
So just a clarification, the EdTech one, I would be just talking to you about it. Our competency-based education presentation is the one which we're going to be doing in the hybrid mode, because we did the entire training in that mode. So good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here today. And so I'm here to showcase the new, very brand new professional development course, which has been developed by Cambridge. So I just share, could you tell me where the presentation is? Yeah. Right. So this is the Cambridge Professional Development Program that has been developed by Cambridge University Press in India for foundational and preparatory levels. However, it is also very relevant to teachers of upper primary and secondary levels. So I'll just give you a quick glimpse into it. Yeah, I clicked. No. Thanks. Right. So these are some highlights. The online platform has 40 hours of learning content to facilitate self-paced learning. Then we have blended products, pedagogy-centric, and 8 lesson plans. So it's an online course which is specially designed for for teachers to enrich their pedagogical skills and also create what they called learning moments and sharpening their edge. Let's look at it a bit into detail. So we'll just play this video for you to understand the program. If I just click on it.
Teachers are a common ground between theory and practice. They shape futures. They spark new ideas and create inspiring moments in classrooms and in life at large. Teachers give students and schools the edge. And to make that happen, they need to sharpen their edge. Introducing the Cambridge Professional Development Program, a self-paced online course with 8 hand-picked pedagogical concepts for teachers to bring innovation, imagination, and originality in learning. Equipped with this learning, teachers can create a better impact, turn lessons into learnings, subjects into interests, and experiments into experiences. Join us for the Cambridge Professional Development Program for teachers to sharpen their edge and transform teaching hours into better learning moments.
Right. So let's look at the 8 modules that the course has. These include active learning, metacognition, Bloom's taxonomy, teaching with digital technologies, assessment for learning, but it also includes student engagement and behavior management. So this is a part of inclusion of social and emotional learning in the curriculum, which is advocated by the New Education Policy 2020. So we have done a lot of research into all these areas which are very relevant for the teachers. And we have come up with very specific subject-based animations and classroom examples, which are the real classroom scenarios, which tell teachers how to navigate a particular situation in the classroom. So if you delve into the course on our website, you would see we have a number of animations which are subject-based. So we have tackled English, maths, science, social sciences, and so on and so forth, with proper classroom situations with questions and answers that the teachers can watch at their own pace. We also offer downloadable printed materials, which you can download and you can use at your ease. And you can probably also modify them if you need to. So again, the same thing is again highlighted here. So I've already talked about it, the videos, the learning modules, animations, and downloadable printable materials. So let's move ahead. All right, so it is quite aligned to the NEP 2020 in different ways. And I have created a couple of notes for that, which I'd like to read out here. So for NEP 2020 alignment, the course is aligned in different ways. So when we come to teacher's role, the NEP advocates that the teacher should be the center of the classroom, and the course gives the cutting edge teaching learning skills to the teachers. We equip them to keep learning, which also, so I personally believe that whatever competencies and skills we want to give to our children as teachers, we should be first masters of those. So that is the basic aim of the course that we have taken up. In terms of course content, NEP 2020 says that there should be autonomy for teachers in incorporating pedagogies, and SEL should be addressed. And as I already told you, we already have taken care of that by including modules on behavior management and classroom atmosphere. We also include a big number of pedagogical concepts and methodologies for teachers to use, and these are ready-made for teachers to use. In terms of learning format, as per this NEP 2020, the training must be flexible and modular. And this course exactly fits the bill because it is completely personalized online. Teachers can do it at their own pace in a given frame of time in a very, very user-friendly virtual environment. Coming to assessment. So I've already talked about the learning material. So let me focus on the assessment. So you have graded, progressive, continuous, and randomized question banks available. Each of the 8 lessons that are there, they would have a formative assessment as well as a summative assessment. So as soon as you finish a part of it, you would be getting a formative assessment, which would be in the form of 10 or 12 questions, which you can do multiple times till you get all of them correct. And then at the end of the module, you would have a summative assessment, which would again contain about 12 questions. So this is how it works. And after completing all the 8 modules, you would get your certificate of completion. So that is how the assessment works. And for more information, please log into the cpdinfo@cambridge.org. The course would give 40 hours of CPD, which again is advocated by NEP for every teacher to get about 50 hours of CPD in a given year. So it fits the bill there as well. I do have my colleagues online as well in case they want to add anything, but otherwise I'm happy to take your questions if anybody has any question on this. Okay, so do we have any questions?
Yeah, from the virtual audience, many in the chat are asking what is the cost of this course,
right,
and how can they access it?
Right. So there are different ways of accessing the course. We have done this in partnership with TCS Ion. So the platform is called TCS Ion, and they can go to our website, Cambridge University Press website, and they would see the details of how to reach the landing page. The cost of the course is approximately 3,300 plus GST. So which is the most affordable cost that we could offer our schools for a 40 hours of, learning modules. So I hope that answers your question. Alternatively, schools can get in touch with the British Council or with Cambridge reps in their region directly, and they will be led on to the course. Both ways of joining are available. A teacher can join directly by logging in and clearing all the formalities. Or we also offer a school model where school heads can nominate their teachers and do bulk registrations in that case.
Yeah, that's all, because the question was whether teachers can enroll themselves or will schools do it for them. So we just answered
both options are available.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. And we'll see you again in a bit with our CBE presentation.
Thank you, Nivedita. So moving on, we have the next EdTech presentation by Christopher Jolly from Jolly Learning Limited. The audience they are pitching at is primary school teachers and principals, and those with an interest in the early teaching of English. So can we switch the screen for the presentation from Jolly Learning Limited? Christopher, I would request you to keep up to the 10 minutes time for your presentation, followed by the 5 minutes Q&A, and we'll notify you with a beep as you finish your 10 minutes. Over to you.
Great, and thank you very much. And it's a great pleasure to be with you. Let me share my screen and be able to talk this through then with you. Okay, so my name's Chris Jolly, and I'm the publisher of Jolly Phonics, which many of you may know. It is the most widely used program for the early teaching of reading around the world. It's extremely popular in India. And some of you may have met me at the CBSE conference in Lucknow, where I presented, which was 5 years ago. Our commitment to India is very deep. We not only sell widely to private schools, we also provide pro bono to quite a number of states, most recently to all schools, state schools in Nagaland, Sikkim, and much of Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. We also have more Jolly Phonics trainers on our website in India than in any other country. So let me talk about what this is. The key thing here is that the program itself is using synthetic phonics, and this is a term used to describe what is recognized as the most effective way of using phonics and the most effective way for young children to learn to read and write in English. Indeed, the term was coined from a researcher who did work on Jolly Phonics. Now, I just want to cover what this teaching is about in a couple of slides, and then to talk about the ed tech that we have that supports this and which is available for use in school. I should add that it's not just ed tech that we have. We have books, we have flashcards, posters, we have a whole range of storybooks, and we go on through the primary years further with grammar. But the core of it starts with this process of learning to read with synthetic phonics. And what this is about is, whereas historically children were taught to memorize words, now they're taught to be able to work them out. So they learn the letter sounds and they use blending to read. So k, a, t makes cat. And they do the reverse for writing. They take a word, they segment it into its sounds. So dog goes into d and ah and g, and then you can write it. And the results are very dramatically different. Now, so what are the key features? Firstly, that we teach letter sounds, and there are more of them than there are the alphabet. There's 42. And as I mentioned, we teach blending for reading, segmenting for spelling. And this works extremely well. It's not just that the children learn faster and they enjoy it, but we enable all children to succeed. It is effective with children who do not have English as their first language and whose backgrounds can vary. Now, where does this take us then? So the flagship program for us in teaching reading, EdTech, is Jollyphonics for the Whiteboard. And this is a program that is for a full year. So there are lessons and a suite of slides for each day of the year. The children are systematically taking it through. And there's a page here, for instance, with actually quite a lot on, besides the story that goes there, and the story can be read, best of all, taught by the teacher, of course. It can go on into hearing the sound, into hearing a song, and then we go on into further aspects. I've chosen V as the letter to show. That's the lesson for the day, because, of course, as you know, in India, it's common for V and W to get mixed up or confused, or certainly in speech, because the difference isn't made strongly in first languages. But for young children, they're very capable of making that difference and of using it. So they're introduced to the sound, and then they get the opportunity to practice. And so here are some of the slides which would come on the same day and which would take the child through. So the slide you see on the left there, the child has to come to the screen and add AN to each word. And so you can see van, man, pan, and then sand, panda, and candle. So the children are writing that in, but then they're reading it and drawing a picture just to show that they understand what they've written. Over on the right-hand side, you see the reverse, you see the segmenting. So the first picture you see there is of a bus, and they have to work out what sounds are in bus and can they write them. There's 3 lines underneath, so they have the clue that there are 3 sounds there, and so on with the others. The one in because they're picking up the letters and drawing them down when they're given the word by the program, invent, and can they actually write it? It's not, from a writing point of view, a difficult word. It's regular, it says each of its sounds, and of course it gives the opportunity for the teacher then to explain what actually the word means. So these are activities that we have on Jollyphonics for the whiteboard, and it is very extensive and needless to say, very popular. Now, you've just been hearing about the course from Cambridge online, and the comments made about recommending online training I endorse thoroughly. We do a course ourselves, just the same, and like them, it's 20 hours. This seems to be very much an industry standard. And in our case, this is a course that has been available for quite some time. It's extremely popular in India. And in the case of, for instance, the Republic of Ireland, the course is being taken by more teachers than teach in the first year of school, because virtually every teacher has taken it, and as some of them have taken it more than once, and in particular, as new teachers come in, they take it. And on the international studies on the teaching of reading, Ireland outperforms almost everyone. It's the most high achiever in Europe, and excels more than the UK, for instance. And when I talk to people, they put this particular course down as one of the key reasons why teachers in Ireland have performed so well. It goes through both the background and then into practice. There's videos, there's opportunities to practice the sounds. There's a facilitator you're in email contact with. And like the Cambridge one, and very much in the pattern of these things, you submit for completion at the end. You need to demonstrate in a written form the achievement, and then the certificate follows to validate that. And of course, it has the benefit that you can take it at a time to suit, and a place to suit. And from our point of view as publishers, we can get much more content into online teaching and ensure the quality in a way that's not always possible with lecture training. Although there is great validity in online training, in face-to-face training, in particular with the motivation, the ability to answer questions readily, have a community spirit. So both are valid. Now, besides the online training, talking further about EdTech, of course, one of the interesting things about EdTech is its variety, is the range of things that we can offer, all within the same theme. In our case, the use of synthetic phonics, so children perform outstandingly in the early teaching of reading and writing. In this instance, we have an app for children called the Jolly Phonics Letter Sounds app. It teaches each of the letter sounds and then has games and activities for the children to practice. Games that self-correct. They tell the children if they've got it wrong. They congratulate the child when they get it right. It's one that the child can use themselves and use obviously on a mobile device, be it a tablet or a phone or what have you. And several children can use it at once. So a valuable resource there. And alongside this, still as an app, we have the Jolly Phonics Lessons app. And in this case, it's directed at the teacher. And so here there is the plan of the lesson, again, for each for the letter sounds and beyond, where there's the story, there's the actions that come in Jolly Phonics, there's the formation shown vividly and dramatically on the app. There's the songs, Jolly songs, which you may be familiar with, which are a great favorite, and activities that can be carried out. It's the sort of thing that a teacher can use and both just before a lesson or indeed in the original preparation. Just a final word that we move on from phonics into the years that go beyond, all the way up primary years, another 6 years, with what we call Jolly Grammar, but it's more than just grammar. It's grammar, it's spelling, it's punctuation. It's enabling children to be accurate, both in how they write and in the spelling and the punctuation they use. And it's enabling them to be expressive. I love the child who was described to me by an Indian lady who's a pediatrician in a presentation I did in South India. She said, "My primary school daughter corrects my English." And this is the kind of way in which it's achieved. The children are taught the skills through the program. And of course, the reason they need to know the proper nouns, for instance, as opposed to common nouns, is that proper nouns have capital letters on them. So they need to know how to recognize them. And then they can write them correctly. So with that, let me conclude. And as I say, you see here, our mission is about enabling children all around the world to be able to read and write in English, because then they can have a profession, they can travel, they can have access to the knowledge of the world. And thank you. And I look forward to any questions you may have.
So do we have any questions from the live audience here, or Sujata, in case if we have any from the virtual one?
Yeah, from the virtual audience, many are asking, till what age can phonics be taught?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand the question.
To what age group can phonics be taught? Is there an age limit to teach phonics to children?
No, there isn't. It's an essential skill that every child needs. Now, some people may say, well, look, how young can you teach phonics? And typically in a government school, it would be children about 4.5, 5. In a private school, it's more likely to be about 3.5, but it doesn't really matter. I think the prize was a teacher I was visiting in Pune, in Maharashtra, And she taught the young children she had the first three sounds of Jollyphonics, which is S and A and T. And then she'd put those letters up on the wall, and she asked the children to point to them when she said them. So she would say one of the letters like A, and the children correctly pointed to the right one. The children were all 11 months old. They were not even one. So they were learning phonics skills, arguably. Was it helping them? No, not at all. They thought it was a lot of fun. Letters are actually quite consistent. They're more consistent than colours, for instance. For the older children, the need is still there. In Ghana, for instance, we've achieved such outstanding results in the first year of school there. The Jollyphonics has now been adopted as a one-off for all years, all the way through primary, so as to ensure that all children in Ghana who leave primary school are able to read and write. And the numbers, as you can imagine, are very high. So yeah, it's very broad.
Thank you, Christopher. Sujata, any more?
No, that's it.
Thank you. So now we move on to the presentation on CBE Pedagogy Principles and Practice by Cambridge Partnership for Education. May I call the Cambridge team to come and deliver the session in the hybrid format now. So Preeti, Nivedita, Stephen and Mark.
Thank you very much, Pina. And a very good afternoon to all our teachers and educators who have joined us in person as well as live on our YouTube sessions that are running. I am Preeti Hingorani. I'm the Vice President for Education Reform for Cambridge Partnership for Education. And it's an absolute delight for me and my colleagues, Mark and Stephen, joining online, and Nivedita here with me to be a part of this great competency-based learning, education and learning session with you today. And absolutely, we do feel extremely honored to be a part of the changes that the CBSE is bringing with the systemic reform and being a partner with British Council and CBSE to implement the reform that's happening in India. Can I run the slides, please? Thank you. So the way we've planned it today is we'll give you a little bit of overview about ourselves, and then we'll quickly deep dive into the work that we have done, which can be used by teachers all across India as they're implementing competency-based learning in their classrooms. Can I move with this? Okay, thank you. All right, so a little bit about us as Cambridge Partnership for Education. We are a part of the University of Cambridge, and with this division, what we do, we work with governments, ministries, international development organizations to help them implement ambitious plans for the reforms that they have for their country. And as a part of the university, of course, we act as a bridge between research and practice, and we are able to bring into focus solutions that are workable to achieve the ambitions that the governments would have. With the National Education Policy 2020, the CBSE aims to strengthen the capacity of schools and to deliver high-quality competency-based lessons. With our partnership with the CBSE and the British Council, we do feel fortunate to be playing a part here. And what we do is we bring forward the expertise and learnings from Cambridge and work together to realize the aspiration of making this shift from from rote learning to competency-based education. And in the process, I would say every teacher, every member of the education system who would adopt into it would be contributing to the larger goal of India to make India a virtual, vibrant knowledge economy. So as Cambridge, what we did was, along with the British Council, we partnered with the CBSE, and we have been able to develop master trainers who would be cascading these trainings back to teachers all across CBSE and allow them to dip into a lot of lesson plans, which will help them implement the competency-based learning in their classrooms. We've initially started in this project. Of course, we have trained 360 master trainers. Many of you have been a part of this journey with me. And we do believe that these lessons plans will be helpful for all teachers. And now we'll quickly take a deep dive into what we did and how it's going to benefit you. I'll invite my colleague, Mark Neeson, to join us online. Can we make Mark as the presenter, please? Okay.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes, absolutely, Mark.
Excellent. Yes,
Thank
hello.
you.
So, hello, I'm Mark Neeson, Head of Professional Development Solutions at Cambridge Partnership for Education. It's a pleasure to speaking to you today about the project and about how Cambridge was involved. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take you into a little bit of the thinking that Cambridge has done and just talk through some of our approach. And my colleague, Nivedita, is also going to talk through the exact items that have come out of the project. Next slide, please. So to start with, I want to share a bit of thinking that we do at Cambridge about competencies. Firstly, I just want to start with the concept of curriculum, because the competencies that you've been discussing that have come from the NEP are within the context of a change in the Indian curriculum. And there are several layers to curriculum to think about. Firstly, you have the curriculum as a defined at national or state level. And that curriculum provides guidance on what should be taught and how it should be taught. The national and the state level curriculum is used by schools with or without modifications to produce a school curriculum where you internalize what the curriculum means for you and teachers in your schools know what's expected. For example, a grade 4 teacher knows what they should cover in an academic year from the school curriculum. When that teacher takes the curriculum and starts teaching it, they're implementing it in their classroom. It becomes the taught curriculum, where the act of teaching adds another perspective to the original intention. After teaching's done, the question becomes, what does a learner walk away with? What have they learned? And that's the learned curriculum. At each level, you've got thinking, you've got input, you've got perspectives, and you've got action. And these 4 levels are highlighted in the Cambridge Approach to Improving Education, which is a document that's available online and free to access. This use of the curriculum by different audiences for different reasons can lead to variations, and learners from different classrooms and schools having different experiences, but all learners fundamentally learning the same curriculum. So, where do competencies come in? Next slide, please. Underpinning the curriculum is something sometimes called the unstated curriculum. This is often the unwritten curriculum, which encapsulates the ethos, visions, and attributes a curriculum should develop, regardless of phase or subject. Competencies historically have fallen into the unstated curriculum, where some schools prioritize some over others. 21st century skills are often mentioned, and different schools have different approaches to these competencies. They've always been there, they've always been developed, but have they been explicitly thought about? And the role of the NEP has been to draw this out. Next slide, please. Competency-based education is about pulling out competencies out of the unstated curriculum and making them an explicit focus at each level, where you can account for them in national plans. Schools think about them during the school-wide curriculum planning. You as teachers consider them when teaching, and learners walk out of school knowing they have developed them. At the moment, you're in a fantastic position where you're thinking about the school curriculum, the taught curriculum, and what approaches to competencies will work at a school level, and what exactly should a teacher do to support competency-based learning. I've talked about this because I think as a teacher, it's really important to know why you're doing something, why you're having a change in practice. And it's because of this act of pulling out competencies from something that was always implicit and now is becoming explicit. Next slide, please. Focusing on the classroom, and something schools need to think about, is the curriculum is not one blob. I've shown it as a blob. It's not like that. It's divided into grade and subject levels. So you will have grades 1 through to 10 or 1 through to 12. You'll have subjects, mathematics, science, and English. And so those subjects will change over time. So science often stays as science early on in the education system and then becomes chemistry, biology, physics, earth science, and sometimes other things as children get older. As a teacher, you're working within that context. So you've got to think about, what does it mean for you? So next slide, please. So the question isn't how do you teach innovation, but for your grade and subject, what do you expect to see from learners? How do you nurture their development in a competency, in each competency? For example, innovation in English may be about sentence structure or language use, while innovation in science may be about experimental design or how learners connect their science knowledge together when forming conclusions. They look very different. It's the same competency, but they can look and feel different. And as a teacher, you need to be aware of that. This means thinking less about what to teach and more about what opportunities are given to learners to demonstrate a competency and explore the curriculum knowledge and skills in a way that will help them with that. For example, teaching it in context will really help them think about, there's an opportunity. Can I use my knowledge and skills in that context? Can I apply my learning? Can they then demonstrate the competency in that way? Next slide, please. As such, there are two major practices which form the bedrock of the training and as part of the Cambridge side of the project, which are already used in many classrooms. First one is effective lesson planning. So opportunities for learners to demonstrate and develop competencies are planned for. And then you've got formative assessment, also called assessment for learning. So you as teachers understand where learners are and can adapt teaching in a lesson or between lessons to develop their competencies. A competency-based learning approach is about effective teaching and being mindful of the competencies that should be developed in a lesson. For one big takeaway, it's probably going to come down to, in a lesson, is thinking ahead to what is the opportunity that you're giving the learner and what questions will you ask that will allow you to move them forward in developing a competency while saying, are they there? Where are they? How can I help them further? I'm now going to pass you back to Nivedita, who you heard from earlier, who's going to share the Cambridge thinking in greater detail, particularly around the lesson planning part of the training we provided. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. So hi, I'm back again. So again, to introduce myself, I'm Nivedita Bose, Senior Education Manager, South Asia for Cambridge International. And I support professional development for about 700 schools that Cambridge has in South Asia, which offer our qualifications. So this project has been very close to my heart because PD was at the heart of it. So taking on from where Mark left, Cambridge's education is rooted in evidence-based research. So active learning, assessment for learning, and metacognitive practices are the three focus areas which aim to make the teachers as well as the learners responsible, innovative, confident, engaged, and reflective. These are the 5 Cambridge attributes that underpin all our qualifications and educational endeavors. This is what we try to bring in this project when we got the opportunity to work closely with CBSE and British Council to introduce competencies in the planning that is being done by teachers. And as you heard earlier, we had training sessions for about 360 master trainers. Most of you have gone through the same training, so you are aware of how it went. I'll just summarize it a little bit in detail and give you a glimpse of certain lesson plans which you may not have had a chance to look at yet. So the training highlighted that we need to embed competencies in our curriculum to make it align to NEP 2020. This would make our curriculum at par with the international standards and also preserve our unique culture and traditions. Most importantly, we showed the teachers that they did not have to start from scratch. They already have a very strong content in the form of curriculum provided by NCERT and the resources provided by CBSE. So they just needed to add competencies to that existing curriculum, and that is exactly what we did by taking them through the resources of CBSE and NCERT. So taking inputs from the participants, using NCERT's learning outcomes, and also the assessment frameworks done by Alpha Plus, we design a set of model lesson plans. So these are based on the topics taken from NCERT 6th to 10th, and they show how teaching and learning can be used to help develop competencies and 21st century skills. I'll now show you, so before I show you the examples, let me also tell you what was our approach towards lesson planning. So every school has a different format for their lesson planning and how they want their teachers to record that. So we just picked up the 3 basic components of a lesson plan, which is what the teacher wants students to learn, how he or she is going to facilitate that, and then how they are going to check whether children have learned that or not. So the 3 components, the objectives, the content, which is the teaching learning activities, and how they are going to assess that. Now let's look at extracts of 1 lesson each from science, maths, and English to just demonstrate this to you. So this is a lesson from English, a grade 6, who did Patrick's homework. If you see the learning outcome, it says that reads a variety of texts in English and uses meaningful sentences to describe or narrate. So instead of getting the children straight to reading the lesson, the teacher can start by asking them to vote what they think about the homework, whether it is fair, whether it's unfair, and do some children get help from their parents, others don't. So does that cause any kind of, difference? Is that fair? So you are, at the beginning of the lesson, you are setting them to think. Then the teacher leads them on into reading. And after a point, after reading about 4 paragraphs of the lesson, the teacher then asks this: what words would you use to describe Patrick? So you are further scaffolding their thinking, and you are helping them to form sentences, which is one of the learning outcomes. But at the same time, they're doing it on their own, just with the support from the teacher. So it is not prescriptive, and every child has the chance to express what they want to say. So again, competencies addressed here are collaboration, communication, and also learning to learn. Next, if I show you a maths lesson, this is solving quadratic equations from grade 10. Again, it's a board class, but that doesn't mean that we can't have competency-based lessons there. So this is a lesson on solving quadratic equation, where the teacher is asking them to solve an equation in any way possible, and then discuss among themselves how they solved it. So it's about what was your approach to factorizing these expressions, and how can you check your factorization is correct. So again, children are providing support not only to themselves, but also to their peers, because they're going to discuss, one child did like this, the other did like this. So which was better, which took more time, or which had any error? So again, metacognitive practices in action. Similarly, a teacher can ask learners to work in pairs and correct a piece of work given to them which has mistakes. So this is how we are again bringing in competencies like collaboration, critical thinking, and communication. Moving on to science and connecting it to what Mark said earlier about the lab skills. This is a grade 7 lesson plans on acids and bases, where children are made to do an activity in the lab, but before that, they're asked to record their predictions. Because the teacher has already told them about what an acid and base is, when you are making them identify acids and bases, you can ask them to predict which one do you think is acid, or which one would be the basic. And then they actually do the activity, and then they compare what they predicted and what they found. So without them knowing, you are seeding the base of how to form hypothesis, how to check hypothesis, how to observe, how to draw inferences. So all the lab skills are getting inculcated in them right from a simple experiment on acids and bases. Similarly, to make it a real life connection and how to make it useful for them, the teacher can also have a discussion to say where do you think we could use the litmus test in daily life, and how can we use it to ensure safety in our environment. So it could be a simple thing like checking whether the bath water is acidic or basic, or whether the cooking water is acidic or basic, whether it is right. to be used, whether it is safe to be used. So this is how we have incorporated competencies in a very simple way in the existing lessons that you have. So these were the glimpses. Moving on to the assessment for learning. This is a short extract from our brief on assessment for learning, which is openly available to all of you to check. And along with this, there are many other resources on Cambridge website. So whenever you have time, please visit and check. Now, what we kept in mind while designing the assessment for learning embedded in the lesson plans is whether the children know what the learning intentions are. Learning intentions are not to be just in the teacher planning or records or the teacher diaries. They need to be communicated to the children in their language. Then the classroom activities themselves should pave way for a teacher to assess whether the child has learned or not. So even when you are designing an activity, there should be an element of assessment embedded in that without children necessarily knowing about it. So this could include teacher moving around in the class and listening to what children are discussing. That is again a form of assessment. Providing feedback, which is concrete. So a child needs to know, what do I need to do next? So, an ambiguous feedback is not helpful for them at all. If you just say good work and you can do better, it's not helpful. And we all know that. But they actually need concrete steps as to how they can improve on their work. Then peer learning, activating students as learning resources for one another. So that I have already discussed. And then all these together would automatically make children responsible for their own learning. And that is where the metacognitive practices come in place. So this was our approach to the designing of lesson plans and also the training, which you have gone through, and it was an extensive 6-day training and pretty tiring. So what are the takeaways? To begin with, we would ask you to go to the website and check the lesson plans. They are available now on the CBSE micro website. Please ignore Diksha. That's we earlier thought it's on Diksha, but it's on micro website. Download the plans and use them. And if needed, please also give us feedback on those plans, or if you have any suggestions, and that would be a way for you to bring competencies in your lessons. And also please share them with all your colleagues in schools. So with that, I come to the end of our presentation. I hope we could make it a bit useful for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nivedita. Would you like to stay back for a quick question and answer round? Yeah, in case if we have any questions from the live audience or virtually.
I thought we've used 15 minutes, so it was better to go. But yeah, any questions are welcome. Yes. So there's a set of 30 lesson plans, 10 each for math, science, and English from across grades 6 to 10th. So there are sample lesson plans, and these are just samples for teachers to initiate them into designing lessons of those kinds.
So many have appreciated your session in the virtual chat. And one question is, what is the role of the teacher in a personalized competency-based classroom?
A classroom can never be completely personalized because teacher is the lord and master of the classroom. Without a teacher, classroom doesn't exist. It's just that rather than prescribing what a child should learn, you are helping them decide for themselves what they want to learn. And that doesn't reduce your importance. It in fact increases it, because you will find children can approach you better. They don't feel threatened, you know. So I remember when I was a student and a teacher used to come in the class who was very prescriptive, I would be scared to ask question that what if I am, made fun of? But now we say that no questions are stupid, only answers can be stupid. So that, I think that has the change that has come, and no technology, no personalization can replace teacher. I firmly believe that. It is the teacher who can motivate the children. So when it comes to social emotional learning and embedding it in the subject-based learning, I think teacher's role can never be denied. I hope that answered the question, or probably it was a stupid answer. That's it. Anybody else?
Thank you, Nivedita. That was a wonderful session. So before we move to the next EdTech presentation, let us have a look at our library video. Moving on to the next EdTech presentation by Anne Attridge from Click to Learn. The Digital Learning Hub offers a complete ecosystem for English language learners. Designed with younger learners in mind, the interface is simple and intuitive. Can we now switch the screen for the presentation from Click to Learn?
Well, good morning. I'm Anne Attridge, the founder and CEO of Click to Learn, and I'm delighted to have this opportunity to speak to you this afternoon. I'm just going to share my screen with you.
We can see the screen, Anne. Continue.
Can you see the screen now?
Yes, we can.
Good. That's fine. Well, I'm a little bit further away, perhaps. I'm speaking to you from sunny Scotland this afternoon, which is not something we can always say, but here we are. So I'm delighted to be here. So I'm going to talk to you, first of all, about the work Click to Learn is doing in India with a couple of pilots and with the Digital Learning Hub for English language learning. One is in Gujarat and one in Mumbai. So I'm just going to go back to the first slide. So when we started these pilots, we're working, by the way, with an NGO and a charity. We were addressing two problems. First of all, recovery and catch up from the long closure of schools due to the pandemic, which is something that every country is facing at the moment. And secondly, encouraging pupils to be less reliant on the teacher, less reliant on teacher input, and simply learning how to learn. So enabling them to acquire the metacognitive skills that have been mentioned already this morning, so that they can transfer these to any subject, not just language learning, which is of course our speciality. And we've been developing language learning software for almost 10 years now. And at the outset, we had two key priorities. First of all, to make learning fun for the learner. In other words, we were trying to make it addictive, if you like computer games in the best sense of the word, where you want to carry on learning. And I'll be able to give you a little bit of an insight into how that works in this short presentation. And secondly, and very importantly, it's been again stressed this morning by the previous speaker, how important the teacher is in the digital world. So we wanted to give teachers the tools they needed to teach better, not just by giving them high quality digital content, but by giving them access to data and insights into their pupils that you simply can't get from standing in front of a class of 40 to 50 pupils. And I think that's one of the key advantages that technology can bring to this whole sector. Our aim has always been to teach English as a means to an end, not just an end in itself. In other words, to give pupils the language they need to move on to employment or to further study with English. And for these pilots, we wanted to see how fast pupils could learn and could make progress in English from a pre-beginner level, and what role the teacher can have in its blended learning flipped classroom model. So it was important to us, first of all, to localize the learning. And we started with training our local partners and teachers. If we're to ensure success, then we do need local champions, and we need people we can train to get the most out of the content we have on our platform. And there are hundreds of hours of learning there, and the tools we have that they can use to communicate with and teach their students online. So we first needed to explain to them how our diagnostic testing works. We have on our platform a couple of versions of a diagnostic multi-level testing. It's based on the Common European Framework. And it's something that in a short test, for example, the pupils can access as and when they like. It's just, again, for formative purposes, not for summative purposes. We also have a full version, which tests all 4 language skills, where the tutor is the teacher is obviously involved in marking, writing, and speaking. Now, most tests in English start at the bottom of the CEFR, that's the A1 level. But what we've done here is we have offered a level which has been particularly important here below that, what is, if you like, commonly being referred to as the A0 level. So we've designed a pre-beginner test, which gives you much more granular information about what the term beginner actually means. And we found that being very useful here, because we've seen how a range of pupils from the age of well, grade 6 to grade 10, if you like, have exhibited different levels of learning, even at the pre-beginner level. We divide that into 3 bands, band 1, band 2, and band 3 being close to A1. So from that starting point, we have a benchmark to assess pupils' progress. Now we know how important it is to make digital a friendly place to be. Our interface is being designed specifically for language learners. It doesn't have any computer jargon or even any written instructions. And for these pilots, we created a special video with a Gujarati-speaking monkey, which tells the pupils how to log on, where to start their course, how to use tools like the notebook and the audio voice recorder to communicate with their teacher. So here we have some of the results from that test. Ranging from absolutely almost no knowledge of the language, that would be at band 1 there, to almost the top of the beginner scale at this A2 in the Common European Framework. But what I want to highlight here is how our approach is completely different from a language app, for example. And as you see, the pupils are accessing it on their mobile phones or tablets, just whatever they happen to have as a device. For a start, of course, the teacher is involved in guiding their pupils and tracking their progress. And secondly, there is, and very importantly, no rote learning. You don't master a language by memorizing words and phrases. So we only use authentic situations and conversations to introduce vocabulary and grammar. And for our basic skills course, which takes people from a pre-beginner up to the A2 level. This is based on the idea of a world journey. So they're traveling around the world and listening to English in different parts of the world and learning about different countries as they go. It's designed specifically to be a global product, if you like. And they can actually hear different varieties of English by clicking on a country's flag. So they can hear an Indian accent, a Nigerian accent, an accent in America, for example. And above all, we make learners think. And we use a lot of the techniques from the world of gaming to encourage consolidation and deep learning. We give pupils rewards and coins to spend to buy things that they need to further their virtual journey. And we encourage them to beat their first score on an activity by trying against the clock. We've always been passionate, if you like, about making things interactive. So on every screen, there will be some sort of interactivity that the pupil has to engage in. They have to click, or they have to drag, or they have to listen and have to respond. For more complex tasks, we also include a stuck option. So a character will pop up and give them the answer in order to help them to move forward. So there's no passive reading or listening. We also tackle the structure of the language, and we have a simple grammar guide that we wrote specially to cross-reference with our courses so pupils get further examples of how to tackle some of the tricky things in English grammar. And we developed games and stories at the end of every module to test their grasp of vocabulary and to test their grammar through using a game. So let me just quickly go back there. Right, so here are our success criteria, and you can probably see on your screen there the monkey I mentioned earlier. We will start with training the teachers to be confident in using the tools and to understand the approach we use and the reporting dashboard, how they can use that to their advantage. For our current pilots, for example, we're giving them access to weekly data on their pupils' progress so they can see the time they spent on each activity, the percentage they've completed, their last login. All our activities are divided into quite bite-sized learning, 15 minutes perhaps. The learning outcome is clearly stated, and whether we're focusing on a listening skill, a reading skill, a writing skill, or a listening skill. So we divide these into two tables for teachers so they can see at a glance which pupils are doing well and which pupils are perhaps lagging behind and needing some extra support. And that's where the expertise of the teacher comes in to be able to differentiate and personalize the learning in that way. We have a large knowledge base, so we can show teachers where to find answers to their questions, which is a searchable bank of material, which will enable them to exploit the program as much as possible. And we make sure that they know how to use our range of additional learning, because in addition to our two core products, we have a range of digital resources within the hub that are designed to extend learning and to give pupils even greater exposure to different materials. For example, we have graded English videos, and they're graded from A1 up to B2+. They also have captions and a tremendous resource for pupils to get extra practice in reading and listening. And there's a teacher bank of materials associated with them too. We'll shortly be adding the Oxford graded readers to our platform so we can extend reading activities again. And all these things are tracked on our dashboard so you can see what your pupils are learning as often as you like. Now, finally, on a practical note, as I said, you can access all of this on a mobile phone, tablet, or computer at home or in school. We can scale to millions of learners. We have developed everything ourselves. We have our own code base, which we can control. We can, if like, host that on Indian servers if necessary. Our bandwidth requirements are not high. And we can integrate local language into the training videos. And above all, we do understand, because it's common to every country at the moment, the pressures on educational budgets. And we can deliver the Learning Hub at highly affordable prices. So I would like to answer any questions you have now. There's a lot we've tried to cover in this short time. And I'd be happy to take questions now. Thank you.
Sujata, anything from the virtual audience?
No, everybody is appreciating the information and find it very interesting. Though a question is that what you have shared today, is this for all levels of learners, primary as well as secondary?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Obviously, people approach English language learning at various stages in their lives. From a very young age, we're working, as I say, with pupils as young as 10 at the moment in India, but we're also delivering the same program very effectively to adults in the UK who may have arrived in the country with very little English or sometimes very little education. And so the program has been designed to be, if you like, agnostic in terms of age, but we do, I think, probably appeal more to a younger audience in the sense that they are much more familiar with the kind of approach, the kind of gaming that we have built into our platform. But it's not an early learning program. It's designed really for pupils who are beyond preschool. Right? But other than that, then I would say it's applicable to a wide variety of age groups.
Thank you, Anne. That answers the question. Thank you for the session. So moving on to the last EdTech presentation for the day, we have Text Help Limited. They've created an award-winning range of innovative software solutions that help educators and students improve literacy, maths, and assessment. Can we now switch the screen for the presentation from Text Help Limited?
And good afternoon, everyone. My absolute pleasure and privilege to be here today. And I'm coming to you all the way from Belfast. I know that Anne said it was a very sunny Scotland in the British Isles. It's a very sunny Belfast here as well, which is indeed a rare day. What I'm going to do just for the next few minutes is just share my screen. So I'm just going to jump into a screen. I'm going to share a very quick presentation with you today, and hopefully we'll have some time for some questions. So my screen should be shared. Hopefully everybody can see that. If somebody could just give me a thumbs up on that, we're all good.
We can see that, Patrick. Please continue.
That's perfect. Thank you. So just by way of introduction, my name is Patrick and I am from Ireland, and many times in Ireland we'll get a shorter version of our name. So you'll hear me referred to as Paddy McGrath as well, a very stereotypical Irishman. I'm head of education strategy at the company Text Help that we've just talked about. And really my job there is to make sure that all of the tools that we have, the software tools that we create, genuinely support teaching and learning, and helping you as educators understand how you can benefit from those tools and translate those into curriculum areas, or in this case areas for assessment. My contact details are on there, and of course I'm sure they'll be shared after today. So it's my privilege to be here, and I just want to share with you at the outset a very, very short snippet about Text Help. We have just over 300 employees. 7 out of 10 US districts use our product solely for accessibility and inclusion. We work in 47 countries around the world, and that of course includes India, where we have several channel partners who support all of our products on the ground there in schools across the country. We add about 25,000 students each and every day to use our tools. And right now, as of literally this morning, we have 47 million users of our tools. So we're very fortunate to be in that position, but it also means that we have experience in order to scale up usage and support that usage as we go. So we're used to both individual schools coming on board, right down to individual teachers, and also then entire countries that come on board with our tools. We're very, very fortunate in 2021, just this year, to be awarded the Queen's Award for Enterprise. So what is it we actually do? Well, we're probably well known and mostly known for our software tools, and those are tools that primarily support areas of literacy. So reading, writing, and accessibility. So language learning and language support specifically for pupils perhaps with individual needs or pupils that are learning English. But that's not what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about maths today. And what I want to present as we go through just over the next few minutes is one simple maths tool, and a simple tool that will enable you as educators to easily create, share, and assess maths tests for a competency-based framework. So we've looked at the competency-based framework, and we're used to dealing with this across the globe. We've said, right, well, what is the challenge there? And the challenge is we need to equip teachers not only with the framework, with the methodologies and the approaches and the requirements, but we need to give them the tools to actually create those questions, to get them in front of our students and let our students start to answer those questions. And then we need to be able to assess them smartly as well. So that's what I'm going to show you, just one very quick tool. And we're not going to do a demo today. I'm just going to show you some screenshots to give you a flavor for what we do. If we think about the competency-based framework and we think about what it lays out, and we think about maths, what's it really saying at its very heart? Well, if you look at the first point there, demonstrate knowledge and understanding of mathematical ideas, techniques, and procedures. And that's what we want to give you, a tool that helps you demonstrate and your pupils demonstrate their knowledge and understanding. Different ways to express, different ways to access that, particularly and specifically when they're learning online. And there's a couple of core concepts within that. So key concepts, let's think about 4 that we'll draw out. So reduce focus on recall. This is all in your framework. Use of visuals, increased use of visuals for representations and manipulatives to help understand and grasp mathematical concepts. Accessible language use within there, and point-based marking for assessment. And I'm just going to pull out those 4, and we're going to see how a tool can actually solve that. Now, if you think about maths, and you think about looking at the framework and how you might create questions that fit into that framework and assessments and tests that fit into that, and you're doing that digitally, there's one thing I can guarantee that you've all found, and that's this, that digital maths is painful. It's actually quite hard to create. If you are exploring 3D shapes, or you're exploring volume, say, of a sphere, or you're trying to create nets, or you want to give them number lines, or we want to go through trigonometry and algebra, actually getting that into a document or into a web page or into an online or digital assessment, quite difficult to do. There's no one place you can go for all your manipulatives and images, and there's no one whiteboard that answers all of it, and there's no simple way to type maths. And so that's why we created Equatio, which is the tool that we're just talking about today. So Equatio is a very simple set of tools that you can visit on one web page. So all we've got to do as a teacher to create some maths content that fits into the framework is go to a single web page, and we've got all the tools we need. When your pupils get the assessment or the quiz or the test, they go to the exact same page. They have the same tools, and they can explore maths in exactly the same way. And the page is on screen here right now at this moment. Now, you won't be able to actually log into this. We're going to equip that just after today. But all you would do as a teacher to create maths content is to go to equatio.texthelp.com. You've got a mode there to create content, to share it, to mark it, and to assess it, and to keep track of scores. So only one page, and because it's a web page, it means it's going to work everywhere. So whether it's a Windows device or a mobile device or a Google Chromebook or just in a browser, this is going to give you and your students the tools that they need to explore maths. So it does that with just a couple of simple tools. So it'll give pupils, as an example, and yourselves for creators, an equation editor, so we can just type maths very naturally. Instead of looking for a complicated keyboard to find that squared notation or that plus and minus symbol or the square root, we can just type the words that we want in natural English language and it'll give it to us. We can do graphing. We can handwrite on a touchscreen device or on a mobile phone, and that handwritten maths will be turned into digital, so we can do maths really quick. We could dictate, just speak the maths. Imagine creating an assessment where you're able to simply switch the microphone on, speak the maths question into the microphone, including all of the notation and advanced mathematical language, and it'll put that right into your document. We've also got some buttons there that are going to give us access to 2 and 3D shapes, which we'll look at very quickly, and tools like digital calculators, protractors, all of the tools we might need online. So end to end, this one tool, equatio.texthelp.com, will give you the ability to create maths. We'll give you the ability in one click to share maths. We'll give pupils the capability on the same webpage to complete maths tests and assignments, and it will further give you the ability to provide assessment and feedback on that. So very quickly in a couple of screenshots, in a creation mode, think of this as a PowerPoint slide. So we can create as many questions as we want. We have access to 240 different mathematical symbols and diagrams and representations that we can use. So if we're estimating angles as a question, if we're doing Pythagoras theorem, if we're measuring angles, we've got a digital protractor. If we're calculating volume, if we need to invoke a calculator, which of course is in the framework, we have access to all of that as we create. And you'll see just at the top of the screen, I've just typed out a simple expression at the top of the screen. So I've got mathematical notation there as well. And I can also put in graphs. So when I'm thinking through the framework, and I'm trying to think through exactly how I might come up with really great questions for my pupils, I have the notation tools, the diagrammatic tools, the representation tools to create really engaging assignments that fit perfectly into the framework. So that's how we would create, and we can easily share. So here's what happens. Whenever I create my questions, and I can create as many questions as I want, I can even import them from a photograph, and I create these questions. Now what I want to do is share them to my pupils. All I need to do is create the questions, press one button, and I get a single web link. I can email that out to my pupils as a test or an assignment. I can put it through Google Classroom. I can put it through Microsoft Teams. I can share it on my VLE or my LMS. Any way I get my pupil a link, I can send it. What do they get? Their individual test, the tools they need to complete that test, and the ability to send that back. So they can use the same tools you had to complete things. So if we want to draw a line of symmetry, you've given them the question there. They can very simply draw that line of symmetry with freehand tools. They can use the calculator as you've seen before. And when they're done, they press one send to teacher button, and all of their answers to all of your wonderful questions are sent directly back to you for assessment. It also means that as a teacher, if you create a fabulous set of questions or an individual question, you can use the same share link to share that with your peers. So your peers now together collectively are building a bank of questions around the competency framework. Assessment is there. So when items are turned back to you, you've got the ability to mark in freehand, but also to give point-based marking there and some additional feedback both in voice and in terms of text. You can do this in bulk, so you can mark a whole class very quickly. So that's me wrapping up today. We've got 4 areas. Equatio will let you, from the maths classroom in conjunction with the competency-based framework, create maths, share maths questions with your pupils and your peers, allow your pupils to complete, and allow them to allow you to assess and provide feedback. It works everywhere a web browser works. And that's Equatio. I've put my contact details on the screen. I really appreciate your time here today. By all means, reach out. We have lots and lots of resources to get you up and running with Equatio, lots of video clips for you and your pupils that can help, and some exploratory tools that you can experience the toolbar and that experience just for yourself. And I'm more than happy to be contacted to help anybody with that. So with that, thank you. I'll hand that back over to our wonderful lead presenters and our host today. And I'm more than willing to take any questions that may come from the audience in person or online.
Thank you, Patrick. So over to the audience for the questions. The virtual ones.
Yeah, in the virtual audience, many are again saying that this is a very interesting app. And one question is there a similar resource for science? And another question is, are there any sample questions in Equatio?
So on the first point, we do give science tools there. So I showed basic mathematical level manipulatives and diagrams, but we go through the entire physics and chemistry curriculum. So as an example, if we're, say, studying physics, we will have lenses, we will have pulleys, forces, all of those diagrammatic tools. We have over 200 different physics equations built, and formula, I should say, built in there as well. From a chemistry side, we also have an interactive periodic table of elements, which is built in. So if pupils are, for example, for chemistry teachers, simple example, calculating an atomic mass, they can simply go to the periodic table, they can get the relative mass numbers, and they can start to put those calculations in. And that includes all of the notation of chemical symbols. We also have a molecular viewer on there as well. So all of the tools you might need for any area of maths within pure maths as it is, and also through physics and chemistry particularly, everything is included there. On your second point, are there sample questions? So we have an online library of sample questions, but I would say that they are not necessarily created in line with the competency-based framework in general, because they come from a global standard. The tool itself is designed to take the framework and to help you model questions within there and be a little bit more creative. So the tools to create the questions that fit into the framework rather than model questions there. What could be done is model questions could be created there, and those can then be shared with everybody with a simple web link. So we could look at how we could create those tied directly in with the competency-based framework. The facilities are there to do that.
Thank you, Patrick. That answers our questions. We'll move on to the next section. Yeah, thank you. So after all these great sessions, I will now invite Rashi Jain, Director, North India British Council, to come on stage and give a vote of thanks. Rashi, can we have you on the stage, please?
Thank you, Peenal, and thank you all. Before I start, yes. So once again, good evening, everyone. And we at BC are, along with the partners, actually truly believe that competency-based education is the project or the work which can actually help students tackle the 21st century problems and challenges. And I just hope that after the arduous list of presentation and videos you've gone through today, you share our feeling. And with that, I also would like to thank our partners, especially CBSE officials, who have joined hands with British Council in making this project a reality. And I must say, we feel extremely proud to be part of such a transformative project. This is also an opportunity for me to thank all our UK partners, Department of Investment and Technology, for bringing such brilliant edtech firms for presentation to you, Cambridge, Ectis, Alpha Plus, and the University of Bath for the unwavering commitment towards the project and great contributions towards the project as well. As I was saying that this we truly believe is a transformative project, and we thank you all for giving your time today, for those who have taken time to come and be here in person and those who've joined us virtually as well. The proof of the pie is in the eating. So we also believe that, and we also will be feeling very, very delighted if you're able to utilize all the resources that are available both at the CBSE website and at the British Council website, and also use this platform, this project to truly transform, as I was saying earlier, the teaching methodology and as well as the learning outcomes, again, for students to face 21st century challenges. Thank you all for being here today, and thank you all for joining us virtually. Just a small announcement, the Cascade training is going to start from 18th of October, I believe. So looking forward to seeing a lot of you on that one as well. And thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Rashi. So with this, we close today's events. Just to repeat what I mentioned at the starting of the event. So all these resources, the videos, presentations, along with the links of the EdTech catalog will be shared with all the attendees at the end of the 3-day event. On behalf of the British Council now, we would like to invite you all to join us for a high tea in the Charbagh. And those of you who are interested can take a quick tour of our British Council library on the first floor. Our staff will guide you accordingly. Thank you once again to everyone who's present here in person and all those who've joined us virtually. Have a great evening. Thank you once again for your immense support and participation. Thank you.